Live at local morning radio, coming to you from the studios of Magic Broadcasting on Laird. This is the Kramer Show. This is the Kramer Show. The phone is now open, and the phone operators are standing by. Turn down your radio when you call. Pay attention and be ready to go. 850-233-9988.
I said, if you're having the best time of your life right now, let me get it. Yes, sir.
This is Kramer. Kramer.
What's going on? It is 7:04. Today is March the 28th. Looks like a pretty day on tap. In fact, pretty week ahead. Basically, clear sunny skies, highs in the 70s. Not warm enough to get in the pool yet. Get me, please. I'm ready to get in the pool.
Just do it. Just dive right on in.
God, it's way too chilly. I mean, we got to be about 82, 81 around there for me to do it. You know? And then 85 and over, we're good.
Once that pool water gets a little bit warmth to it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Scott Major's with us. Scott Major from Major Paruas and the Storm Help Team, stormhelpteam.org. The Donut Man is here. What up, Mr. Scott Major?
Hey, pal, how you doing?
I'm groovy. Look, I got to ask you real quick your thoughts on the whole Jussie Smollett thing. It's one of the most bizarre legal stories I've ever seen.
It is an extraordinary situation, to say the least, to have such an overwhelming amount of evidence against someone, and for all of the charges to be dropped, and for records to be sealed, and for there to be interactions and text messages received, that show that there was attempts to, negotiate or navigate their way around because of the status of the person, just has so many implications, whether you believe Mr. Smollett or not. It's just, it's a sad day in justice, when you have this kind of nefarious, investigation going on, when police chiefs and mayors and other people are talking about how much evidence there is, and then all of a sudden all the counts are dropped. It really is troubling. And I'll tell you, I can understand from a general standpoint why you might not want to charge somebody with 16 different counts that relate to a similar act, even though they're justified. But to drop all the counts and then to, as Rob Emanuel, who's no fan of Trump or Republicans, believed it was a whitewash of justice, to have a complete sealing of the record and all of that calls into question really what our justice system's about and whether there are two systems of justice. And I'll go a step further and say that, the case is technically not dead, because theoretically the federal court system could bring a mail fraud or a federal charge, because that is the state charges that are there. So there's probably going to be some investigation that occurs, but it just is, it's saddening, and it's just unfortunate that this is what goes on in America. If the individual, really did not have any evidence against him and he was sure that he was going to be exonerated, he should have had his day in court and been able to prove that, and then we wouldn't have all of this nonsense going on where the public loses its faith in the justice system, and I'm saddened by it, and it's angering, and it just is, it's really a bummer. It really is.
Can I ask you a couple of more surface questions about this? Because this came out the other day, and you realize, although I read and follow the news, and I've read a million legal stories and all that, I'm just a couple of basic questions. Number one, how easy is it for a judge to seal this paperwork? Was that basically just his call, and he didn't really, beyond that, is there anybody that could go in there and say, are you kidding me right now? There's no way. That's not legal. So once he seals those documents, they're never going to be seen again?
That's correct. It is generally not common to seal records like this in this kind of case. And even the state attorney who recused herself after coordinating with Obama's former chief of staff, or it said that she didn't even believe that it was the intention to seal the records. I mean, obviously, think about it from a more general standpoint. If every single person in America could get their records sealed, why wouldn't they? If it was just a request that could be made that you want your records sealed, you want any arrest that happened to you to be sealed and no one to be able to use them, why wouldn't everybody do it? Obviously, there are strict criteria for allowing that. One of the more important, significant things, too, is if the Empire show was terminating him or no longer doing work with him because he was charged with a crime or it was a violation of one of their contractual provisions, then they would be breaching their contract if they continued to leave him terminated after his records were sealed, because even though the public knows about this, he would technically, it'd be as if you etch a sketch. He would not have been in violation, and therefore they would have to hire him back.
Wow.
And whether or not they choose that, in my opinion, suicidal, selection, the reality is that when you seal someone's records, it's as if nothing ever happened, and a lot of other consequences that are beneficial to the person happens. I personally think that I would love to be able to be the lawyer who could represent the city of Chicago in a lawsuit to cover money against Jesse Smollett for his fraud in requiring the police department to go on this ridiculous, investigatory thing that cost over $100,000.
Would that be possible?
I personally think that it could be possible, because fraud is civil action, and if somebody engages in conduct which causes you to have to pursue, cases, then I think that you would have a cause of action in a civil court. In a criminal situation, you generally cannot get that unless the court orders it inside of the criminal case, either a restitution or a payment of costs, neither of which was employed in this case. One wonders why, this situation occurred.
Yeah.
It's one thing to dismiss charges. It's another thing to agree to seal a record. We don't know what happened in that courtroom that caused the sealing of the record. It is extremely unusual. Extremely unusual.
What is your take on that? That was my next question. Was what is your take on why all this went down this way? That's a really broad question, because it could be a multitude of things. It could be who knows? But what is your gut feeling?
I don't think there is a single human being who can look you in the eye and honestly tell you that this was anything other than a deal. This was anything other than, using your celebrity status and knowing people and doing things, because the evidence was overwhelming. They have him sending himself a letter. Let's contrast. Everybody is innocent until proven guilty. Let's not confuse that concept of due process with the reality that you have a check written for $3,500 to two people who were willing to testify that they got the check in order to fake the assault on him, that the FBI had what they claimed was 100% certain evidence that he had written this letter himself, Smollett. This is not one of these cases where you have no evidence or a bunch of circumstantial evidence and no witnesses. So the case, you don't drop cases like that. You don't drop a case of this magnitude when somebody has committed these acts just because you think the sentence isn't going to be that big a deal. That's not the way our justice system works. And it's just, I think that the best angle is for the federal authorities to pursue a federal charge of mail fraud, or a other federal statutory crime in order to save face in our justice system, because I think what's happened is awful. Once these records are sealed, there's nothing you can do about it, because what's happened is not only is Smollett out there saying that he was innocent all along, and they are now attacking the police department, saying they're defaming them for attempting to release the police files, and they are getting gag orders, and they are upset with people spreading those things. And so it's unfortunate. Once the case is dismissed, the person is no longer charged, and they can protest their innocence as much as they want. It's very unusual. I mean, if you take a look at even the prostitution case with the New England Patriots coach, they suggested that they would drop the charges if he admitted in open court that they would have been able to prove the charges. In other words, some concession that made it clear that the act was wrong. I don't think anybody wants him to be put away for life. They just want our system of justice to work. They just want to know that if somebody does something wrong and you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, that there's a consequence to behavior.
Yeah.
And anybody who attempts to change the issue, by polarizing it or making it about racism or something else is just missing the mark. I'm sorry.
Totally right there with you. I went back and was looking at some footage of the superintendent in Chicago when all this broke, and he said, you can go back and you can pull this up, he said that they have Uber receipts from when Jussie Smollett and then these two Nigerian guys got together, and they found out where they got in the Uber. So they went back and pulled the street cam of these three people, Jussie Smollett and these two guys, in an Uber. They had the footage of them getting into an Uber together. And this was days before the announcement of this attack, all right? So they took an Uber to certain places and were looking together where they think that they should, do this simulated attack. They went down an alley and went into another street and actually practiced the attack. They have followed all of those things. Oh, as you said, overwhelming evidence on every front. Some of it we know, some of it we don't, because they haven't released everything yet, I don't think. But just overwhelming evidence. And it is a slap in the face to anyone in this country when just some... look, no one knew him prior to this story. Nobody really knew who Jussie Smollett was. He wasn't a household name. He wasn't on television all over the place. He really is not even worth that much money. He's worth $500,000. His net worth, compiled as of this day in his career, is $500,000. That is not a man with a whole lot of power and a whole lot of clout. So I don't see him going to these people and saying, hey, you got to do what I'm telling you to do here. I'm innocent. Let's go out there, make the announcement, expunge it, or whatever you want to do, seal it. I can't even understand how that's even a thing.
Well, it's just unfortunate when you get to the bigger picture of justice. It's just unfortunate whether you believe in due process, whether you believe in now that the cases are dismissed, we ought to move on with our lives. It just shocks the conscience of every listener when they see something like this and they see that no justice has been done. When they see some of the dual standards that have gone on, with some of the investigations of other individuals. When they see, a Mueller report come out and people aren't joyous. Your president has just been exonerated.
Right.
You don't have to like the guy, but why aren't we celebrating in the streets that the president of the United States was not involved in Russian collusion? Whether you think he was never involved or he was, you have, 500 different witnesses spoken to and 3,000 subpoenas issued and tens of thousands of man hours and, $80 million of money spent, and 4 separate investigations besides that. Why aren't we celebrating? And I just think it shows a bigger problem, again, with the whole attitudes of America and some of the misguided principles that are being driven by a few. Not by us, not by the overall listeners who may at some points feel impotent to be able to change the system, but by congressmen and senators and people. Adam Schiff's on the radio, on the television, the day after the Mueller report saying there's absolute evidence of collusion. There's no doubt there's collusion, and there's always been collusion. And you had that other fella, Smallwood or whatever his name is, saying, hey, nothing in the dossier is false. You have to stop, and you can't even respond to it. You have to say to yourself, something is wrong in our system when those kind of people get the limelight. It's okay for anybody to have an opinion, but when those opinions drive the market space, when idiocy controls the day rather than sensible disagreement, we have to stop and try to take back our country. We have to scream louder when people say, if you use the word Trump, you're going to be banned from high school. Or if you wear a red shirt or a MAGA hat, you're a horrible, leprous person. Or I was giving a seminar just last week, and something came up where the word Trump, came out of my mouth, and one of the people in the classroom was just aghast and said he's a horrible president. And I wanted to stop and say, that's one of the most ignorant things I've ever heard in my life. You don't even know why you're saying that. I didn't even fault the person. And again, it's not about whether you and I are Republican or Democrat or whether we agree. We are all open to different views. But when this kind of, injustice occurs, when our moral fiber is destroyed, when people are being led down the path by idiocy and not sensible logic, it really is a time for all of us to regroup and say, we've got to stop this. We have to stop, the nonsense and get back to ordinary discourse and teach our people that there are consequences to behavior, that we want to teach our youth that lying is not the way to get ahead, that we're not going to reward you for your 15 minutes of glory, that anything you do to lie or cheat or steal, so long as you get on TV or you get the girl or you get the money, is the way to go. We have to look above that. We have to say that this has got to stop, and we have to stand up for morality and justice and goodness.
I'll tell you, Scott, those words, and listening to you talk, I mean, that you're a very smart guy with a very common sense, bitingly common sense approach to looking at this country, and we need to get back to more of that common sense approach to looking at things without all the distractions of the division. The distractions of the division are getting louder and louder and louder. We need more people like you with common sense that talk in a practical term about being a patriot and what that really means. And what you just kind of spoke of and touched on there is a great principle of patriotism in this country. Now, we have Scott Major on from Major Paruas to talk about post-hurricane stuff. 850-233-9988. We'll be right back with more Scott, all right? Stand by.
850-233-9988. This is the Kramer Show on NewsTalk at 101.
Hercules. NewsTalk at 101. Scott Major with us today from Major and Paruas and the Storm Help Team. You can go to stormhelpteam.org. Their phone number is 844-800-LAWS. We have to get our own home here in order. We got to get our city back in order. We were talking earlier in the show about how rent has gone up, the cost of living has gone up. This is a critical time in the city's history, really. I mean, nothing like this has ever happened. Scott Major, on the phones, are you hearing people that are to the point where they're getting desperate? It's been, 5.5 months.
It is growing ever frustrating by the day, and you and I have spoken about this on numerous occasions, that you really need to get your lawyer involved, because we need to step up the efforts to try to get people paid, and just the non-legal way, the non-litigation oriented way is really just not working for at least the hundreds, if not thousands, of people that I hear about that still haven't been paid their amounts. And I can tell you, as soon as yesterday, I was in a examination under oath yesterday, and the person on the other side, the lawyer on the other side who was taking the examination, the deposition, the sworn statement, actually conceded to me that they still don't have all the documentation, and they were surprised that prior to this time they didn't have all the documentation, so they couldn't even make a significant enough offer that was in excess of the deductible for this large condominium that had 10 buildings in it. So, I can't emphasize enough that getting educated yourself about what it is that is causing the delay in your claim is so incredibly important. And then if you are not being paid and you have the reasons why, filing your civil remedies notice or getting a lawyer involved to create more motivation for the insurance company to come on board, I can't scream it loud enough. I'm just trying to help all of you listeners know that you're entitled to all the money that your contract provides you for. And you are only harming yourself by not taking advantage of what the law and what your contract provides and what you honestly paid for, not only this past year, but perhaps for years or decades.
Scott, we're coming up on a break. When we get back, let's talk about that a little bit more, about what's causing the delays and and how easy or not easy it is to actually find out, know, and then where to go from that point on. If you guys have a question for Scott Major, light them up, all right? We got another 30 minutes. You got 30 minutes with one of the most bright attorneys in the region who's done this insurance stuff for many years. 850-233-9988.
This is Kramer. News Talk at 101. Bringing some fun back to Talk Radio.
I'm a Mog. Half man, half dog. I'm my own best friend.
This is the Kramer Show on News Talk at 101.
7:34, Scott Major's with us today. You have the opportunity to call up and get on the air and pick his brain about anything that's going on with you, whether it be about the insurance company, the mortgage company, contractors, etc. 850-233-9988. Kevin, you're up with Scott. Go ahead.
Hello, good morning. My question's regarding insurance companies acting in bad faith, I guess. My public adjuster has mentioned that that's a possibility, and he wants to get a lawyer involved. And is there a bigger payout for bad faith? I mean, is there?
Yes. So thank you for your question. Let me tell you a little bit about bad faith. Bad faith is governed by a Florida statute, 624.155. It is a statute that protects insureds, you, against insurance companies who act unreasonably. Unreasonably is the same phrase as or same words as bad faith. And the way they define that is if it was appropriate and proper and timely for someone to pay you, for the insurance company to pay you an amount you are owed, and they act unreasonably, they unreasonably delay payment, or they don't pay you when they should. If you give them the proper notice, called a civil remedies notice, the insurance company can be liable for up to 3 times the amount of what you're owed, plus attorney's fees, plus other consequential damages, emotional distress, loss of business opportunity, other types of cognizable damages. So that is why it's so important for each of the listeners to recognize that when you have an insurance company, for example, that has agreed to pay a sum, has sent you an estimate saying, we think there is $80,000 of damages, and they don't pay the amount, they are essentially saying, we believe this is the undisputed amount, but we're not paying you. They are acting in bad faith. When you have specific damages you can prove to them that are supported by the insurance policy and by your estimates and photographs, engineering, general contractor reports, and they don't pay, and they don't offer a good reason for not paying, they can be found to be in bad faith. So yes, I strongly encourage you to motivate the insurance companies to pay the amount that they're required to pay by informing them through a civil remedies notice that if they don't pay in a seasonable and reasonable amount of time, or if they unreasonably refuse to pay, that there are consequences to that. And I urge every public adjuster, every listener, to get lawyers involved to help with pursuing those causes of action, because we are 5 months out and everybody should have been paid. And if you weren't paid, let's hope it's not because you didn't do something. Let's hope it's because the insurance company didn't do something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and also, I mean, if it does go to litigation, and I wind up losing, who's on the hook for the lawyer's fees at that point?
If you're unsuccessful, there is no exposure to you. So, for example, if I was representing you and we lost the case, you wouldn't have to pay me fees. So it's the risk that the lawyer takes when they pursue the claim. They call it a contingency arrangement, that they are seeking to try to get recovery from the insurance company, and they only get paid, lawyers only get paid, if they are successful in recovering money. So it's pretty much, to me, a no-brainer why everybody shouldn't get a lawyer involved as soon as practicable to pursue the claim and help try to get you money where you're now 5 months out and aren't fully paid. Thanks for the call.
Okay, thank you very much.
Have a great day, pal.
Thank you, Kevin. We were talking earlier about what causes the delay, and I don't know how deep you want to get into that, but I think that's also something worth touching on. Is that sometimes people may not really even realize what's causing the delay.
Yes, I mean, if you start with the premise that you need to make sure you have your own estimate as to how much damages there are, and you have the photographs and reports which support that. If you have that, then I'd be on the phone or by email every day writing the Love and Kisses letter asking, why aren't you paying me? Tell me the specific reasons in writing as to why you're not paying me. What specific provision in the contract? What scientific principle, what engineering principle are you saying is the reason why you're not paying me? If you give me no reason, that is bad faith. So tell me what that reason is. And if you don't have that in writing, or you don't have an adjuster at least telling you that, the desk level adjuster, then you need to get that information so you can understand. Because sometimes it is missing documentation, and a lot more times it's just you're not pursuing the claim, and they're not pursuing the claim. And they don't have any eagerness to pay you until you prove to them that they should pay you. And so every dollar that they keep in their account, they're earning interest on it. You consider that to be, morally bankrupt, or whether you consider it to be a perfectly appropriate thing for a company to do until they're shown sufficient information, I really don't care. What I care about is the citizens getting paid the money that they deserve and they've contracted to get paid.
So if somebody is feeling like, okay, I've been dealing with this for 5 months, I'm going to call the Storm Help team. They call you up, 800-844 laws. Did I get that backwards?
Yeah, you got it. 844-800 laws.
Yeah, there we go.
Either way.
So if somebody calls and says, "Look, man, I'm frustrated. I've tried my best to get into contact with the people. They sent me a check. It wasn't nearly enough. Now I got this and that I got to do, and I'm realizing that it's going to cost me even more. And now I can't get them back on the phone. I can't get them to, send me another correspondence through email. Here's what I have. This is when I did it. This is when I sent them a letter. I'm calling you. I'm frustrated. I'm at my limit." At that point, is that when you take over?
That's correct. If you are a listener and you have not been fully paid and you are at month 5, you need to call me, or you need to call your favorite lawyer, period. This is a long time. You need to make sure you find out. Maybe there's no coverage for a particular thing and you think there's coverage. Maybe you need to provide a certain additional piece of information. Maybe you need to send a civil remedies notice. Maybe you need us to send a demand letter for you. Maybe we need to sue. But whatever the case is, you need to hire a lawyer so that you know what your legal rights are, so that you can get what you don't have now. Right now you have nothing, or you only have a partial payment. Get all the money you're entitled to. And I'm telling you, we're not going to take a case unless we think there's value to it. If you don't have coverage, we're going to tell you, don't waste your time, because then we'd be wasting your time and ours if we didn't think the case was valid.
Also, I want to mention, and this is something that we need to mention because we haven't talked about it in a little while, is that you do speaking engagements. That's one thing that you're good at, and that you throw out there from time to time. So if you have a group of people in your neighborhood, if you have a condo association, whatever, if you need someone to come in and to speak to people and get everybody up to par on legal issues, you do that, right?
I'm happy to talk to any homeowners association, group of business owners, the Better Business Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, anybody who I can empower to get the education, neighborhoods who have a bunch of homes that want to get advice. Let's say you even have a lawyer. If you want me to give you advice on whether your lawyer is doing a good job, I'm happy to do it. Call me on the phone. Tell me what your lawyer's doing. I'll tell you, hey, great, this is fantastic. Stay with the lawyer, or tell the lawyer to do this instead of that. We're here as a resource first and as a server second. We want to make sure that all of you get educated and you know what to do. You may not know what you need to do. Maybe you just haven't been educated. But it is so important for all of us, for every resident of Bay County, to get paid so that we can make sure we rebuild our city and our county as soon as possible. It's not going to happen unless you get armed with all of the ammunition you need to fire your weapon.
Scott Major, nationally renowned attorney. He's an author, a speaker, natural disaster expert, insurance claims expert, and makes a hell of a batch of donuts. You don't even know. Let me go to Phil. Phil, you're up with Mr. Scott Major. Go ahead, Phil.
Morning. I had a question. Kramer, you've talked about this. Driveways. Do you have any hints on getting insurance companies to pay for your driveway? Because our 25-year-old driveway, since the hurricane, is falling apart. And we had a concrete guy out yesterday to give an estimate, and he said you wouldn't believe the number of driveways falling apart.
Yeah, ours is
on a high water table since the hurricane or whatever, but
ours is cracking too, and I can't figure out why. Because we didn't have any trees that fell on it, we didn't have bulldozers that had been on it, and just for some reason, if you really look at it, it's not level and it's cracking. I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's really curious.
We didn't have any trees. We've had some trucks, the roofing contractor and stuff like that, delivery trucks in our driveway. But we've had that throughout the 25 years and never had a problem. Now all of a sudden it's a problem. Throughout the 25 years, never had a problem. Now,
Scott, do we still have you, bud?
You do. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were responding. Yes, I think that a lot of times people don't realize that there is a tremendous amount of water that also gets underneath these driveways and under pavers and things, and creates a lot of sedentary problems where you have, sinking and problems associated with that and deterioration. I think it's really important for you to check your policy to see when it is that you can recover for these sorts of things. It may be flood related. It may be related to your insurance, your property damage insurance for your homeowners. But I would definitely look at your policy and see if you have an option. It's not common, but it is possible. But a lot of times this happens from there's water that gets underneath them, or there's lots of debris that gets across these things, which erodes them because you're bringing in lots of salt water and other types of debris, which isn't common, when you don't have a storm. See, when you have these high winds, you're driving lots of debris and material that ordinarily wouldn't be brought onto your property. But at 150-mile-an-hour winds for sustained periods of time, they are carrying salt water and other types of debris and chemicals and other things in the air, which no typical rainstorm would do.
Do most insurance policies have anything like that written in them about driveways, or is that something separate that you have to get written in, or how does that work?
It's generally not common unless if a tree falls on the driveway, you're more likely to get it paid. If it's affixed to a structure, if it's part of a structure like it's your carport or something, that might be recovered. But it's very difficult to recover for just like a sidewalk or a paver. But that doesn't mean it's not recoverable. What I recommend everybody who has these situations is to look at your policy, do 3 or 4 things. Look at your policy, call your desk level adjuster and ask them, will you pay for my driveway? And if not, will you tell me in the insurance policy where it says no driveways are excluded? And if it is, they'll point you right to the page and why they're not excluded. And sometimes they'll say they are included. But use that information that you can get either from the insurance policy or from the desk level adjuster or from your public adjuster or from a lawyer, one of those 3 or 4 angles, and you'll be able to get a good understanding of what caused your problem, and maybe you can figure out a way to provide for coverage for that, in whole or even in part.
Would it be covered if it was damaged by the contractors who came to fix your house from the hurricane?
It wouldn't be covered on your property damage insurance, but it would be covered by the insurance that the contractor has. In other words, if they come onto your property to fix property and they damage other property, they're required to pay for that. They would have their own insurance policy that would help you pay for that.
When they delivered the shingles, I mean, it was a huge truck, but I mean, he actually took pictures of our driveway before he drove on it.
Oh, really?
And then, I'm fine with that because there's a ton more cracks than when he came back. I don't necessarily think they're all his fault, but
don't you? Isn't that weird? Okay, I've heard a couple of other people talk about that, and I think Scott's onto it. It's probably because, and I don't know anything about this stuff, but I would assume that if the water is going up underneath the driveway, it's and it's storing there, and it doesn't have anywhere else to go because a lot of things, in my driveway or in my yard. My yard is not level like it was. There are ebbs and flows in it all over the place, and water runs in odd directions. So it really may be just the water there, that's going up under your driveway.
Well, I mean, we throughout the storm, we didn't have standing water. I mean, on the beach, the water does, percolates through the sand.
No, I'm just saying erosion over time with the water going up under it if it doesn't have anywhere else to go. Don't you think, Scott?
No, absolutely. We've seen on numerous occasions. We see it affect pools. We see it affect houses that sink. We see it affect all kinds of other areas because the water has nowhere to go. It saturates a particular area, and when you see water in dirt, it turns into mud. I mean, you see what that happens. Just imagine the entire area that's right there. That Florida is floating on the ocean. It's not bolted to the inner core of America. Of the earth. So you have to understand that there is a tremendous amount of water coming in. It has nowhere to go. It is very much like when you see these flooding in these middle states in the country and you say, wow, the floodwaters aren't receding. It's because they have nowhere to go. This is the same philosophy that's happening underground. Your entire water table is saturated. The water has nowhere to go. In fact, with winds, it is blowing the water in. It's like those tidal surges that you see. And so have that kind of situation, you're going to have problems.
Got to take a break. I think that's really interesting. A lot of people have really thought that over time that it was the pressure, the low pressure from the storm that created a lot of that problem with the driveways and concrete and other things, but it's turning out to be water. Scott Major on. A couple more minutes, 850-233-9988. Stand by.
We talk about what Panama City is talking about. More Kramer next on NewsTalk at 101.
Donuts.
Kramer Show. It's NewsTalk at 101. Hello, it's Kramer. Scott Major joining us today. Scott Major from the Major and Paruas and the Storm Help Team. You can contact them through the website, which is stormhelpteam.org, or you can call the phone number 844-800-LAWS, 844-800-LAWS. Have you guys, when will you slow down? I mean, will it be literally another year and a half before things kind of die down a little bit?
Sure. I think that the claims continue to escalate because you get, months 5 through 8, people start realizing that they're really not going to be paid the way they're supposed to be paid, and then the litigation starts to increase. Some people keep negotiating, and then you'll have claims later. But yes, it usually takes a couple of years. I mean, with Wilma, for example, we were dealing with it for 5 years because there was litigation for quite some time in many of the cases. But most of the cases, as you've seen now, you see how so many people, have waited patiently and just aren't getting paid, and then they start this litigation process. And sometimes when we get involved, it happens fast, and sometimes it takes a little time. But that's a pretty good guesstimate that it takes a couple of years of continual fighting, to get through all of the claims. That's not to say that if you hire a lawyer today, you've got to wait 18 months. Listen, we have claims that we've pursued and we've already gotten paid on, just from listeners of your station. So, it's just a function of hurrying up and getting to the right legal support so that you can help. And if you have claims, just like these driveway claims, look at your insurance policy, call your agent, get a lawyer involved. You may have coverage for pavers. You may have coverage under a different provision. As soon as they find out the cause of the problem, sometimes that can be covered. So you just want to make sure that you get into this area of law, as we say, with the insurance, that you get the right experts to educate you. How much have you learned over the last 5 or 6 months on this stuff? It's amazing, huh?
Yeah, well, if I can just hang in there for a little bit, I might go and go for the law degree and just get the heck out of this radio gig. Or I could. Would you guys hire me at the firm?
In a heartbeat.
Is there anything I can do?
That expertise alone.
Well,
okay.
I would
be immediately hired.
I was going to say I'd be out there, early in the morning, washing Scott Major's vehicle.
I doubt that. I'll tell you.
Well,
a tremendous amount.
I would be like, I would call you up the night before. I'd say, sir, which vehicle are you wanting to take tomorrow? And then you say, Mr. Kramer, probably the Maserati. Thank you. Click. And then I go and I get the keys. I get it. And I wash it. I cloth it down a little bit, vacuum it out. And then I put a nice little box of fresh donuts right there on the passenger seat, so that in the morning you can wake up, fire up the Maserati, have a donut, and go about your day. That's the kind of service I would offer.
I want to be able to have that someday, and I know you live that life now. Tell me what that is like.
Yeah, sure, okay.
Share it with the listeners.
All right. Scott Major from the Major Paruas and the Storm Help Team, stormhelpteam.org, 844-800-LAWS. Man, what a great hour. Thank you so much, bud.
Hey, thanks for having me and for all you do for the community. We really appreciate your continuing efforts to educate everyone. Thanks a lot, pal.
Thank you, bud. Bye-bye.
Sure, bye-bye.